Good morning, everyone. I'm Alfred Sanchez, President and CEO of the Greater Miami Chamber, and I am absolutely ecstatic to welcome you to our annual Resilience Solutions Summit, Reimagining Resilience through Water and Energy Innovation. It's presented by our Chamber's Resilience Committee, led by Rod Brown from the Nature Conservancy, Irela Bagay, our county's very own and very first Chief Bay Officer, and Nicole Hefty, the Deputy Resilience Officer for Miami-Dade County. Resilience and sea level rise have been an important issue for the Chamber for many, many years because it's a critical issue for business communities. We are extremely pleased that our state leaders have truly begun to take the matter seriously. This year, the state passed a legislation officially creating the Office of Resilience and creating a recurring fund for resilient fortifications and mitigations initiatives throughout the state. It's a great beginning, and I applaud our political leaders for it. But it's only a start. It's only a start in a race where we are already far, far behind. The Chamber has always held that government is a part of the team that's going to solve the resilience issues, but it's only a part. The real solutions are going to come from the innovation, creativity, investment, and sweat equity from the business community who see problems as opportunities and applies entrepreneurial minds to answer to answer the call and make higher earnings and greater returns. We are the real players in turning the potential disaster into incredible gains for ourselves and for our communities and for our future. Last year, the Chamber and other partners commissioned a study on the business case on resilience from the Urban Land Institute. And I really urge you, if you haven't seen it already, to read that. We're going to share a link to it in the chat. And I think it's an important case that will really strongly make it for business community and leaders to see why it's important to invest.
I feel like I need to just...
Good morning, Rick. Welcome. This year's summit wouldn't be possible without the generous sponsors such as Rick from CareerSource South Florida, our presenting sponsor Florida Power and Light, and our event sponsors back again, I think for the third or fourth year, Black & Veatch, EXP, FIU, JP Morgan, and Jacobs. I'm excited for today's programming, which is going to feature our incredible Mayor Daniella Levine Cava, who's been a big advocate for resilience for many, many years, has been a part of this conference every single year, and we welcome her and her new chief role. And our keynote speaker, Chaitovitz, the VP of Environmental Affairs at the U.S. Chamber, our Water and Energy Nexus panel, and lastly, but certainly not leastly, our legislative wrap-up discussion with our representative, Demi Busata Cabrera. Now, before I'm turning it over to Rod to begin our programming, let me just take care of a few housekeeping things. Our microphones are muted, of course. It's going to help focus the discussion. We are going to use the chat box for you to exchange, pleasantries, information, network, but also keep an eye there for important links that are going to be shared throughout the program. If you have any questions of the panels and speakers, please make your questions addressed in the Q&A feature, because that's where our hardworking staff behind the scenes will be looking for them to float them up to our panelists. Today's summit is being recorded and it's going to be later available on the Chamber's website. I'm going to really urge you to, if you've missed any part of this, to go to the Chamber website and view the programming again. And now, before any further programming, I want to again welcome and thank Rod Brown for an incredible year of leadership through very difficult circumstances. If this doesn't show resilience, doing so much through a year that's been so difficult, I don't know what does. Rod, thank you for your leadership. The floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Alfred. Good morning, everyone. I'm so pleased to welcome everyone to our Resilient Solutions Summit. As many of you know, I manage the Climate and Coastal Resilience Program for the Nature Conservancy in Florida and chair the Resilience Committee for the Chamber. This year's theme for the summit is Reimagining Resilience through Water and Energy Innovation. It's about strengthening community resilience in this context with an even bigger theme. How do we best transition to a low carbon future and decarbonize the economy? What does it mean for jobs in this emerging blue and green economy, moving forward on resilient infrastructure, renewable energy innovation, and that water energy nexus, especially when we think about Biscayne Bay and our water resources? I'm excited that key players here in the greater Miami area are looking towards longer term goals of reduced greenhouse gas emissions to tackle the source of climate change. We can't adapt our way out of this. Our resilient solutions need to include both adaptation and mitigation of greenhouse gases. I'm especially excited about the summit today. The Nature Conservancy is actively at work contributing to these strategies with nature-based solutions and innovative financing models. For example, working with the City of Miami on coastal resilience at Morningside Park, working with Miami Beach on a living shoreline project at Brittany Bay Park, and working with the insurance sector on natural asset insurance. And at TNC, we've launched a series called Women in Climate, highlighting Florida women leaders implementing solutions to address the root causes and impacts of climate change. Please tune in on May 21st for that summit. So with that said, we have supercharged speakers today, a high energy panel dialoguing on water and energy innovation, and a legislative wrap-up that focuses on the Resilient Florida program. I have the privilege to introduce our next speaker, Madam Mayor Daniella Levine Cava, also known as the county's water warrior. A social worker, lawyer, and community activist, she was elected Miami-Dade County's first ever woman mayor in November of 2020. Mayor Levine Cava has recently released two very important strategies that move the needle, not only on addressing sea level rise, but also addressing the cause of climate change. I'm happy to mention she'll be participating in the next Women in Climate Summit. Even more reason to tune in. Thank you, Mayor, for all the work you're doing for the county and your leadership on climate issues. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Rod. Very gracious and generous of you, and for your leadership. Thank you so very, very much. And I want to thank Alfred Sanchez for acknowledging that, yes, I have attended every single one of these important conversations. And that's because I know the important role that the Chamber and the business community plays in addressing for our community. Long before I was an elected official, I've been participating. But I want to also acknowledge that our Chief Bay Officer, Irela Bagay, who's of course on the panel today, I think was really one of the leading forces in making sure that this became a hot topic at the Chamber. So as I feel like a lifelong member of the Greater Miami Chamber, I'm very, very proud of the work that the Chamber has been doing. And I want to applaud all of our community partners who are stepping up on this important topic. Great panelists, as has been mentioned, and talking about the critical future issues of our community. We've got water, we've got energy, and honestly, for me, I was not an infrastructure expert by any means when I came into public office, and so this has been a deep dive as well for these critical future topics for our community. And I love the title, Reimaging Resilience Through Water and Energy Innovation. These are obviously critical features right here in this community more than in most. I mean, everywhere it's critical, but here all the more so, and for our public health, not only for our economy. So water and energy are the main tools that we rely on to create economic vitality. And our local businesses are at the forefront of making sure that we can get these things right so that we can assure the livelihoods of our residents and keep their businesses flourishing. So reimagining resilience for Miami-Dade County means that we need to find new ways that we can make sure we use these water and energy resources wisely. And certainly for water, which of course you see behind me, and I think about on a daily basis, is our life, but it is also our local economy is defined really through our water resources. And we have acted in the past as though we had a limitless supply of fresh water, a limitless supply of energy, and that is clearly not the case. And we are coming to understand that. And I think, again, the Chamber's role in educating broadly about how this is a vital part of our future and our economy is really, really important. Caring for these natural resources has been a lifelong passion, although I was not an expert in the infrastructure issues. And I think most of you know that I am, in fact, an environmental champion through a lifetime of really enjoying our natural features, our natural beauty, our vacations, and everything. I've always been in the wilderness. And in fact, I have earned the title Water Warrior as a result of my focus on, now more recently, Biscayne Bay, which is our lifeline to a healthy water economy, and the Everglades, which is our lifeline to our fresh water supply. And so it's a legacy I'm very proud to embrace as your first woman mayor, as a fierce water warrior as well. And in my first 100 days, and I'm actually at about the 6-month mark now, in my first 6 months, I believe I've done quite a bit to focus on this area of water and energy. So here are some of the firsts that we've enjoyed. I joined Governor Ron DeSantis for the rollout of a $20 million program to protect the Bay that was matching state and county resources. I appointed our first ever chief Bay officer, Irela Bagay, who certainly earned the title, honestly, for her decades of service in this area. And of course, she'll be joining today on the panel. And she's going to offer more of the details on how we've already addressed 2 critical challenges at Port Miami. Getting our cruise lines to commit to shore power, and we recently received a $2 million federal grant to move that forward. And we have 2 cruise companies on board, with being the firsts. So they'll be plugging in instead of belching out when they dock and restock at our port. And may I add that they will be sailing soon. I believe, thanks to combined advocacy with the CDC and with the cruise companies to make sure that everything was in order. And of course, I'm very proud to have played a key role in getting the crew members vaccinated at the port so that they could follow through with the CDC guidelines. I know we have some state laws that look like they might prohibit cruising, but my guess is not. So stay tuned. I'm very, very hopeful that our cruises will be out to sea very, very soon. But speaking about the shore power component, not only will that cut our greenhouse gas emissions and reduce our carbon future, but it cleans our air. It helps our waters remain beautiful and pristine so that we can continue to attract people to our beautiful environment. And so those are just a few of the cutting edge approaches that we have fast tracked in the last few months so that we can reimagine resilience through water and energy innovation in Miami-Dade County government as well. And our recent achievements are the result of our unified framework, interlocking plans that keep us right on target to achieve ambitious goals. So these have been included in a number of bellwether reports. We have our climate action strategy that we rolled out, our sea level rise strategy, all these available, of course, on our website. We have our Biscayne Bay report card, which we just again updated, the second one, which I sponsored as commissioner. And I think unfortunately tells a tale of neglect. And of course, we're addressing that aggressively through our septic to sewer conversion efforts and so on, which you'll hear more about. And our fertilizer ban, which was just passed and was the strongest in the state. We also have BE 305 Challenge, or BE is another program I sponsored as commissioner. It's a friendly community competition to help building managers and owners of greenhouse so building managers and owners to cut their greenhouse gas emissions and water use while saving money in buildings. Buildings are actually the #2 source of carbon after vehicles, and so critically important. And I want to applaud those managers and building owners who've already joined the challenge, and we want to invite more to do so. So these are all county efforts that dovetail with the excellent work and rock solid foundation that has been established a few years ago with our Resilient 305 strategy across the whole county and the 34 municipalities, a great, great partnership that this chamber has also embraced. And we're building on these collaborations and also our winning track record that we've been working on diligently for many, many years to strengthen and expand. So rather than reinvent the wheel, we are looking always to discover new ways to make sure that things move forward smoothly. And our great reputation as a global leader has been rapidly evolving in the blue-green economy. So we are ahead of the pack. We're creating business opportunities and high-paying jobs in these new business sectors. And we all know that living here in Miami-Dade County, the environment is the economy. So that means that we can build resilience in all sectors of our economy, and that will be key to thriving, as I already mentioned. So it's great to have this conversation today. Actually, today is the close of Infrastructure Week. So I participated yesterday in a One Water conversation that Hardeep Anand, who's on the call as well, and is our Deputy Director in Water and Sewer, convened. So you'll be hearing from him shortly as well. And we all know that infrastructure will play a critical role as we recover from this pandemic as well. So we are facing major infrastructure challenges here, and among our most urgent needs are repairing our aging infrastructure, modernizing and electrifying our transportation systems. We're addressing both of those, and converting septic to sewer, adapting our neighborhoods to reduce the risks of flooding and rising sea levels. You heard some of those projects from Rod that are underway. This is just a short list for our infrastructure innovation and addressing our needs. So they're all expensive endeavors, and we have numerous studies that prove that they're worthwhile, good return on investment, like the business case from ULI that Alfred referenced. And among the findings of that report was that for every single dollar invested in infrastructure, our community generates nearly $4 in economic growth. So repairing and modernizing our roads, our bridges, our drinking water systems, our ports, and more, we will protect 3.1 million jobs by 2039, and will enjoy even more impressive co-benefits for the manufacturing and healthcare sectors. So we're also becoming even better team players in our growing network of collaborators throughout the business, nonprofit, and energy sectors. We're building a clean energy job pipeline by working with our academic institutions throughout the community to prepare people for the new careers. And I'm so glad that Rick Beasley is speaking next as Executive Director of CareerSource. He's going to offer details on some of these innovations leading to great professional opportunities for our local residents. And we thank him for being just a great partner as we move forward with our economic renewal and environmental strategies. So we need more leaders like you. We need more employers in the new green economy throughout Florida and the nation, not just here. And we need strong, agile cohort of enterprising trendsetters who wake up every morning with their brains ticking a mile a minute on these topics, which hopefully will be the result of your listening to the program today. Thank you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the work that you're doing and being a champion to ensure that our community is environmentally friendly and that we're able to have a wonderful place to live and play. So good afternoon or good morning to everyone. I first want to thank Alfred Sanchez and his work that he's doing as our CEO for our chamber. But Rod, you're a rock star. Thank you for putting together with your committee this wonderful summit. We think this is going to be a fantastic event to be able to share how Miami-Dade County, our chamber, is leading the effort to reimagine how we bring back and enhance our environment, and particularly our bay. And so I want to thank you on behalf of CareerSource South Florida. Our role here is in how we can assist and reimagining and repositioning our workforce to be able to meet the needs of our employers who are redesigning and reimagining how we build our community. So again, thank you. For those who don't know, CareerSource South Florida, we're a public-private partnership that builds and designs employment solutions for our community, whether it's assisting our employers, and again, what our mayor mentioned, some of the initiatives that she's charged us with, in creating apprenticeship models that help build talent for those new jobs, green jobs that are going to be here for the future of our community. So we're excited. We have a number of initiatives that we've launched, an automotive an initiative that we've launched with a major company here with Miami-Dade College. So I'm excited with the direction that we are going. And so again, my hat's off to Rod. Thank you so much for the work that you and your committee members are doing. Let me go ahead and introduce our wonderful speaker. And so I'm going to, and I've been practicing it, Chuck Chaitovitz. And I hope I got it right, Chuck. So charge it to my mind because my heart is in with the work that you're doing and how we're looking at environmental affairs. So Chuck is the Vice President for Environmental Affairs and Sustainability at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And for more than 25 years, he has specialized in environmental and energy issues, working with companies on strategies to improve their bottom line and competitive position. At the Chamber, Mr. Chaitovitz is launching a new environmental and sustainability capability to foster unique partnerships among private sector, the government, and civil societal organizations. His work, he worked with members to support company leaderships on sustainability. And again, a focus that this chamber is doing and how we enhance our community, sustainability, but more enhancement, building with the business case and enabling conditions through common sense public policy and the actions of his member companies. So with that, I want to introduce Chuck. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today and sharing your thoughts on how Miami-Dade County is going to lead our community into the next future.
Thank you so much, Rick, and thanks to Alfred, Arella, and the Miami Chamber for your kind introduction and for including the U.S. Chamber in this important discussion. I'm pleased to be here with the leaders across the community, Madam Mayor, to raise the potential use of innovation and resilience to address the very challenging public health and economic crisis that we're all facing, and to focus on the business community's interest in advancing our shared climate priorities. I am a water guy. I may not be a water warrior, but I'm very aware that many of the impacts of climate change manifest themselves as water issues. Resilience to these issues is key to how communities will respond. As many of you know, the Chamber is the largest business trade association in the world, representing companies of all sizes and sectors, including members of our federation like the Greater Miami Chamber. And that's made up of 2,600 state and local chambers and our member trade associations. I like to say that the Chamber is at the intersection of where policy meets communities and companies. Building modern resilient infrastructure and preparing before the next crisis has long been a priority of the Chamber and our members. We look for ways to reduce risks for our members so that they can go about the business of business and put Americans back to work. And no one knows this better than Miamians, that lifeline infrastructures such as energy, food, health, and water remain at risk. Every week is Infrastructure Week in Miami. So I have a few facts and figures that I want to talk about, which kind of build on what the mayor said about return on investment. So the United Nations estimated that the global cost of natural disasters from 2003 to 2013 was about 1.5 trillion with a T, $trillion, and that these disasters affected more than 2 billion people. A World Bank study indicated that 4.2 trillion can be saved in low and middle income countries with more resilient infrastructure. And then there are lots of estimates out there that anywhere from $3 to $11 can be returned for mitigation projects, for $1 invested in mitigation projects going forward. According to ASCE, for every $1 million invested in flood control and mitigation, 40 new construction jobs across the nation are created. Before the next disaster strikes, we must be prepared. Small businesses especially are facing unprecedented challenges. According to a Chamber survey, more than 8 in 10 are concerned about more than 8 in 10, I'm sorry about that. It's the virtual life for sure. More than 8 in 10 are concerned about the impact of the COVID-19 on their pandemic on their business. 65% do not have contingency plans in place. We're pushing to elevate resilience as a national priority. As part of this, we supported FEMA's implementation of the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program, which is a grant program to provide communities with funding for pre-disaster mitigation projects. And so I'm really sorry.
Are you on the call?
Yes. Hold on, I'm so sorry. And we also have supported the Resilience Revolving Loan Fund, which was enacted last year, that capitalizes state funds to provide low interest loans to communities for pre-disaster mitigation projects, and are working to support funding FEMA and standing up this program. There are a number of common sense policies the Chamber and our partners are working on. We like to fund $100 million for each of 2 years for the RRLF, urge FEMA to fund the BRIC program at its full 6% under the law, and establish a pre-disaster pre-development fund. One thing we know that for any of these policies to be enacted, we need bipartisan consensus. Resilience can be one of those issues that is an early opportunity for this. That's why the Chamber is leading a coalition of more than 350 businesses, business organizations, environment and labor organizations, calling for members of Congress to enact broad infrastructure legislation by July 4th, 2021. This is the Build by the 4th campaign. We'd love to engage the Miami Chamber in this effort. The Chamber also endorsed bipartisan water infrastructure legislation in both the House and the Senate. The Senate bill passed by almost unanimously 89-2. We hope this can create the momentum going forward for continued bipartisan cooperation. Building modern resilient infrastructure and pre-disaster mitigation is good public policy, which is good for the environment and the economy, and important for growing jobs across our nation. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And again, I apologize for the interruption. Back to you, Arella, for some questions, I think.
Thanks, Chuck, so much. And it's okay, this is all virtual, so interruptions happen. And if my dog barks, I'm sorry about that too. Well, Chuck, we have a motto here at the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce: the environment is the economy. And so it is it's great to have you here this morning and hear some of the work that you are doing, which really dovetails a lot into what we're doing too. And I love that quote. We're probably going to tweet that, infrastructure week in Miami is every week in Miami. I love that. But I have a couple of questions, just to engage a little bit more on what the U.S. Chamber is doing. During the past month, we witnessed significant momentum in the efforts at both the federal and the state levels to address both the causes and effects of climate change. And so my question is, what is the U.S. Chamber's role in helping meet the recently announced greenhouse gas reduction goals by 50% by 2030?
Well, thanks so much for that question. The Chamber has been engaging with the White House team led by National Climate Advisor Gina McCarthy since early in the winter, as we work to develop consensus among our members on how we might approach the nationally determined contributions. If you don't know, the NDCs are the way in which countries make commitments to meet their obligations under the Paris Accord. And it's a bottom-up approach, so each country is going to be different. Now that the administration has indicated its ambitious goals, now it's up to all of us to figure out how we're going to get there. One way in which our members, and I think you mentioned it well here today, that there's the Venn diagram of where there's consensus across the business community and among all stakeholders, candidly, is on technology innovation. That without the technologies to take us to the next level of both climate mitigation and adaptation, it's simply not going to be able to get there. So we like to say that we want to reduce emissions as fast as we can, as soon as we can. and do that at the pace of innovation. And so I think that's where the business community is on this issue, and an important opportunity for us to kind of push these issues forward at both the national and the local level.
That's great. Thanks. Yeah, we're on it, all in this together, and it's not just a local issue or a national issue; it's a global issue. I have another question, and this is something that we deal with a lot here as well. How do you convince your members in different sectors and different business sectors of the need to rapidly increase investments, specifically in climate mitigation and adaptation solutions? And in infrastructure, for example?
Well, that also is, it's a great question. As you can imagine, the Chamber, because we represent, as you do in Miami, represent a wide number of sectors, representing the broad business community. Companies and sectors are at different places in their evolution on their climate journey. But we really don't have to convince them at this point. The business community has been leading the way in developing and investing in climate solutions of all kinds, for many years now, and that's relative to the transformation that companies are making, and that the Chamber is making, candidly, that we go where our members go, and that's why we're working so hard on this issue, because of their commitments and interest in this issue.
Great. And I think that's all the time I have for questions today. And really appreciate you participating, Chuck. And I hope that we can continue to collaborate and maybe coordinate our Washington fly-ins with you all in the near future. We're definitely going to need to work together as we push for this infrastructure bill we're very excited about.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity. I think that infrastructure is the next, certainly, opportunity on climate. There'll be a climate title in that. We expect that it will be an important way to kind of push for bipartisan solutions. And so we'd be happy to collaborate with the Miami Chamber on this.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And, within infrastructure, there's a lot of innovation, and that's also very exciting. But thanks so much for joining us. And I hope you can stick around for the other conversations that we'll be having.
Thanks so much. I really do appreciate it.
And now, we've been hosting this summit for the past 5 years, and, we could not do it without the help of our sponsors. And now we're going to hear from a few of them. First up, we have Maria Escorcia from JP Morgan Chase. Is Maria here?
Yes. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Della. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Escorcia, and I'm the program officer for Florida for the JP Morgan Chase Foundation. First, I want to acknowledge and thank Mayor Levine Cava for her leadership in this very important issue. And also thank you to the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce for organizing this summit. On behalf of JP Morgan Chase and our firm's more than 1,000 employees in Miami-Dade County, it is my honor to be here representing our firm and supporting this cause. As we know, communities around the world, including ours, are struggling to manage the impacts of natural disasters, such as severe weather and wildfires, which we know that are exacerbated by climate change. At JP Morgan Chase, we continue to work hard to help communities prepare to withstand these threats. Just this week, we announced the steps we are taking to align our financing activities with the climate goals of the Paris Agreement to reduce carbon intensity in the oil and gas, electric power, and auto manufacturing sectors. This builds on an announcement we made last month to target $2.5 trillion over 10 years to support climate action and sustainable development. Additionally, this year we became carbon neutral in our operations and sourced 100% of our global power needs from renewable energy by adding things like solar power to our branches and improving our energy efficiency in our commercial office buildings. These goals in communities go beyond the firm's facilities to include helping at-risk communities like Miami become more resilient in the face of a natural disaster. Specifically, in the last 2 years, we have invested $1.6 million in Miami by supporting climate-related programs by organizations like Enterprise Community Partners, the Clio Institute, the Atlantic Council, Catalyst Miami, and many others. An example of this is the $800,000 investment in the Office of Civic and Community Engagement at the University of Miami that has helped them develop MAP, a mapping tool that shows the stock of affordable housing in Miami and the impacts of sea level rise, storm surge, and heat to the most vulnerable communities in Miami. Our global reach and expertise makes us well positioned to help accelerate solutions that support the transition to a low carbon and more inclusive economy. JPMorgan Chase is committed to helping our clients and communities navigate challenges and capitalize on the long-term economic opportunities and environmental benefits of progressing towards a low carbon world. We'll continue to partner with all of you as we grow our sustainability commitments and help Miami-Dade County meet theirs. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Maria. And I'll definitely be knocking on your door because banks and financing are some of the needs that we definitely have as we approach a lot of our infrastructure needs here in Miami-Dade County.
Our doors will be open.
Thank you so much. And now it is my pleasure to bring up to the stage or virtual stage, Dr. Todd Crowl from Florida International University Institute of the Environment, an instrumental partner and colleague on many Bay issues and sea level rise issues. And Dr. Crowl, are you on deck?
I'm here. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. And for those of you that are fully vaccinated, I hope you're looking forward to happy hour tonight as much as I am, connecting with friends that I haven't seen for a long time. On behalf of Florida International University, we're very, very honored to be part of this. We're very excited about the focus that the Chamber is bringing on all this. The Florida Board of Governors recently recognized FIU as the University of Distinction in Environmental Resilience. We are very, very focused on the issues at hand, and I'll talk later in the panel about water security and all the things we can do. We're very proud of the fact that in College Magazine, a magazine written by and for college students, FIU is ranked #1 as a university where students can make the biggest difference in our climate crisis. And by the way, the University of Miami was also in the top 5. So we have 2 great universities that are really focused on climate issues and resilience. So the final thing I want to say, Maria, I really very much enjoyed your opening remarks or comments. We are really proud to announce the launching of a new professional certificate in environmental finance and risk management. We are trying to connect the business sector with our ecological restoration and conservation efforts. And one of the things that's been lacking is sort of that financial part of how we do things like Everglades restoration. So we are launching a certificate that basically brings together the business sector with our ecosystem resilience part for things like Biscayne Bay. And I'll speak more about that later. Thank you very much.
Okay, hi, I'm back. Next up, we have a good friend and a longtime colleague from the private sector, Rafael Frias from Black and Veatch, another longtime supporter of our summit and all activities here at the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce. Rafa, are you up?
Yes, I'm up. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, good morning, everyone, and good morning, Irera. So nice to see you. Always very excited to support the Chamber of Commerce. I've supported, for some time now, and what I really enjoy is how forward-thinking the topics are and how the Chamber, your efforts, Irela, as well as Mayor Levine's Cava's efforts, of moving innovation forward and supporting the implementation of resilience projects. So always very, very happy and proud to be able to support the Chamber's efforts. So as I was thinking about the topic of today, reimaging resilience through innovation on the water and energy side of things, I wanted to share some examples, and this example is specific to water and wastewater utilities. It's something very close, dear to my heart, and I think it's quite relevant because after all, energy is the second highest operational cost that utilities have after labor. So thinking about our water and wastewater utilities, and we play some scenarios, they typically have backup generators for emergencies. But the question is, what if we could provide our water and wastewater utilities with their own power source beyond the emergency one that they have? What if this source could be a renewable energy source? What if we could provide storage at the facility to maximize the use of this renewable energy source? All this gives us great benefits, whether it is on the sustainability side with carbon emissions, but also cost savings and resilience, because we would prepare our utilities to be ready for any natural disasters that may come about and continue to provide the level of service that they desire. At the end, we could also say, what if we could automate it in a way that the technology allows for the utility to go on island mode on its own generation for some time and then join the grid whenever it's normal to do so. So what I wanted to share on this example is this technology is really not a dream, it's a microgrid technology. And you'll hear a little bit about this today. But microgrids are intended to provide these benefits to our water, wastewater utilities, or any other infrastructure facility that relies on some additional power for increased their reliability. A very good example that I wanted to leave you with, and nice to hear that Todd is here, is the FIU College of Engineering campus, where we just delivered a microgrid for the campus. It's a 3 megawatt battery storage with 1.4 megawatt of solar PV power. And it also has the capabilities of going on island mode for backup power supply. We're doing this for FPL, our client, who's done great, amazing things when it comes to innovation and microgrids as well. So I wanted to thank you for the opportunity. And this is how Black & Veatch helps our communities and leverages our industry leadership when it comes down to water and energy. So thank you, everyone. We look forward to continuing to support the Chamber.
Thank you, Rafa. And that's a perfect segue into our final sponsor remark for this section. And that is from our fearless leader, Irene White from Florida Power and Light. Talk about all that renewable energy and microgrids. They're the leaders, and they're also an amazing leader and supporter of all of our work here at the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Irene White, Florida Power and Light Senior Director of External Affairs for Miami-Dade County. And it's also my honor and privilege to be your chair for the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce. FPL is proud to be the presenting sponsor for the Resilient Solutions Summit. Today's discussion promises to be terrific as our panelists share insights on how we can work together to reimagine resiliency through water and energy innovation. At FPL, innovation is part of our DNA. Every day, we are challenging ourselves to find better, more efficient ways to deliver America's best energy value. Energy that is clean, energy that is reliable, and energy that is affordable. Whether it's through the continued expansion of our solar energy across the state, including right here in Miami, from our Miami-Dade Solar Energy Center to the solar trees and canopies from downtown Miami to the zoo, and the floating solar that welcomes passengers every day to Miami International Airport, to technology like battery storage, electric vehicles, microgrids, and green hydrogen, we are helping solve for today's energy needs and looking towards the future, building resiliency for generations to come. Please take a look at the video that we have for you.
Things seem to get more expensive as the years go by. Take groceries. Prices have been going up there. And keeping up with your health, that's up too. But did you know at FPL, what you pay for energy has gone down over the last 15 years, and they're not cutting corners either. They're investing in energy that's not just the most reliable or the cleanest, but also the most affordable. A price lower than most states, actually. And that's something we can take to the bank. Okay, let's eat.
All right, you'll get to hear a lot more about our clean energy efforts from FPL's Director of Development, Jennifer Schaffer, in a moment. Now I have the pleasure of introducing our moderator for the Water Energy Nexus panel discussion, Susie Torrente. Susie is a global technology leader for city resilience at Jacobs. She is an organizational strategist with 29 years of experience in local government in South Florida, having served as assistant county manager, Miami-Dade County's first sustainability director, and Miami Beach's first chief resilience officer. At Jacobs, she is working with cities, military installations, and private developers to help identify risks and build resilience in plans, policies, and projects. She holds a Bachelor's of Arts in English and a Master's of Public Administration from the University of Miami. Go Canes. Now it's my pleasure to turn it over to Susie. Susie, the floor is yours.
Irene, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Miami. I want to make sure that we're connected. And can everybody hear me okay?
Loud and clear, Susie. Welcome.
Thank you. It's certainly a pleasure to be here this morning at the 5th Annual Resilient Solutions Summit. I'm really excited about being here. I want to thank Arella, Nicole, and Rod for the opportunity to moderate this fine panel, Reimagining Resilience through Water and Energy Innovation and that Water Energy Nexus. We're definitely living in some exciting times as we emerge from 2020 and the pandemic, and really turning into a transition into decarbonization and a hope for an infrastructure bill and funding for resilience at our state level right now is very exciting. And so what we're going to do is here talk about how are we getting ready for these opportunities? What innovations are we working on? And what's going to inspire our future work? I have the pleasure of moderating this panel, 5 fine panelists, and their impressive credentials are on the website. What I'd like to do is actually really jump into the conversation. I've asked each of my panelists to take about 3 or 4 minutes to kind of share their perspective, where they sit. And it's really an interesting mix of, of water, of energy, of academia, of the workforce. And so I think together we're going to really paint this picture of innovation in the future. So I'd like to start with my friend Hardeep, Mr. One Water from Miami-Dade County Water and Sewer. Hardeep, please share your thoughts and your perspective to start.
Thank you, Susie, and good morning, everyone. A pleasure to be here. And, since Susie said One Water, and it's been near and dear to me, what I'd like to share, Susie, is that, the Water Energy Nexus is not truly a completely closed loop system. So if I can kind of extract everyone's attention, draw everyone's attention to this whole One Water concept based on a watershed approach based to reimagining resilience. If you think about it, when you manage stormwater in the first place itself properly, then that system, that body of water that we probably were not managing well enough, doesn't enter into our wastewater systems. And therefore, if you look at it downstream, it completely transforms the way we look at our costs, right? Because there's a CapEx and an OpEx component to it in the form of less energy used, less chemicals used, and then the triple bottom line of sustainability, the social and the economic and the environmental benefits. And then if you take it further from the role Arella plays from a standpoint of managing our Biscayne Bay and of course the associated ecosystem of water bodies, that runoff then again doesn't go into the canal systems, for instance, and therefore it doesn't impact the ecosystem and the body of water. So it's important for us to understand that everywhere where water doesn't get managed the way it should be, it translates into a footprint as it relates to the use of energy. On the water side of it, the same thing, right? We are abstracting water from the ground, from our aquifers. We are treating it, and then we're distributing it. And no matter how hard we try, we've got one of the state-of-the-art leak detection programs. We do a terrific job, but we're always up against some leaks in a system. And so when those things happen, then the cost of production to produce a gallon of water becomes very, very significant. If you start doing the math, it can run into the millions of dollars. So to the extent we can start looking at technology, for example, AMI systems, and you start looking at data, then you start looking at consciously making those changes, I think it changes the entire paradigm in the way we look at this water energy nexus. What are we doing about it? I'm very glad to report that we were one of the first accelerators in the country to join and partner up with the Department of Energy. It's called the SWIFT Accelerator. We learned a lot, and we've created our first was the Utility Energy Master Plan, in-house development by our own energy manager, Dr. Jason Grant, and of course, our resiliency manager, Debbie Greiner. So a lot of work has been happened collaboratively, of course, with all of the staff from operations that work behind the scenes. And we are on target to reduce 30% of our energy footprint. As Rafa had mentioned, our annual bill is about $30 million. So we are on that target to reduce our energy footprint, and partnership with the University of Miami's Industrial Accelerator is part of that program. And our master plan actually kind of became a model for some of the other utilities. I'll share a little bit more on what's happening down the pike with respect to the innovations that we are engaged in. But I think I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Hardeep. Good to see you. I want to then shift over to Ajay to talk about distributed generation services. He's from Black & Veatch. Ajay?
Yes, thank you, Susie. And thank you, Hardeep. Good morning, and thank you to the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce. I'm really happy for the opportunity to talk to all of you about what we in Black & Veatch, as integrators of water, energy, and communication infrastructure projects, are seeing from our vantage point. Sustainability and net zero carbon commitments are driving a big change in the entire infrastructure ecosystem. So in order to minimize or eliminate the scope 1, which are like direct greenhouse gas emissions, or indirect scope 2 and scope 3 emissions, a rapid electrification of this entire infrastructure ecosystem is happening right in front of our eyes. And this is touching literally all the sectors. So you can name it: the residential sector, the municipal sector, which includes water, wastewater, the industrial manufacturing sector, commercial and healthcare sectors, such as warehouses, hospitals, fleets, transit, ports, railroads, airports. This electrification transition is actually changing how we push the electrons and pull the electrons from our electric grid. So the electrons are the new fuel. From one-way flow from a centralized power generation facility, electrons are now increasingly produced and consumed in a distributed way. That is basically a two-way flow. So distributed energy resources, or what we are seeing, or what we call as DERs, these could include rooftop and ground mount solar, floating solar in some cases, battery energy storage, fuel cells, combined heat and power, and even utility scale renewables, such as utility scale solar, onshore and offshore wind, are ensuring that the electrons that we consume are getting greener by the day. So we're also hearing of next generation advanced fuels, such as hydrogen and ammonia as a hydrogen carrier, are creating this new hydrogen economy. So what we're seeing really interesting is, with electrons being the new fuel, there's a unique opportunity for collaboration with the electric utilities. So they generate most of that fuel, right? The electrons. So what becomes really important is the quantity and the quality and the price that you pay for that fuel or the electrons. It becomes really important. So when we talk about quantity, what are we talking about? We're talking about, do I have enough electrons? How resilient are those electrons? Will I have them when I really need them? and such as during weather events. In some cases, when there are forest fires, like in California, you hear, there's public safety power shutoff. So how do I run our critical infrastructure when the fuel is cut off? So who will provide those? And then when you're talking about quality, we're talking about, the net zero commitments. So if I'm pulling from the grid, is that fuel green? How green are those electrons? So this confluence is happening where we're seeing the quantity, the resiliency need, and the quality of the electrons is going to result in actual projects over the next 5, 10, 15 years that's completely going to change the infrastructure. So then for projects to happen, we all know that price is key. So how much does it cost? So this transformation towards more resilient and sustainable nexus amongst this whole infrastructure ecosystem is being catalyzed by grant monies, the new legislation. But it's what it also does is it's interestingly providing all these players with a new potential for revenue streams. So for example, we talked about microgrids at water, wastewater treatment plants. They can participate in demand response programs and be an integral part potentially of a community microgrid. From the sale of renewable natural gas to production of the transport, storage, and dispensing of this green or blue hydrogen. From electrolysis or steam methane reforming of biogas, it creates an interesting opportunity down the line. Some of these technologies are up and coming, but these are some of the things that you can see in the next 5 years could potentially be a revenue stream for water and wastewater treatment plants, especially the wastewater treatment plants where biogas is being generated. So this nexus is an energy, water, communications, this entire infrastructure nexus is an amazing thing that we'll see in the next 5, 10 years, completely reshaping the landscape. And we want to be there to build it, right? And so that's super exciting time. Again, thank you so much, Susie and the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce. Looking forward to listening to the other panelists as well.
Well, but before I leave you, I just love the excitement I can see in your eyes when you're talking about this. And we have a very diverse audience. And I was kind of wondering if you could just, for some of us that are not so technical, what's the difference between having on-site distributed generation resources and a microgrid?
Right, that's good. So that's a very common question people ask. I have a backup generator. I have some rooftop solar panels on my, on my administration building. So these individual generation sources are distributed energy sources. But just because you have that doesn't mean you have a microgrid. So a microgrid is more of you're putting a layer of like this coat. It's a coat of intelligence that you put on those DERs. So basically, when these DERs are connected, they're talking to each other. And then there is a layer of software that's sitting on it that kind of tells you, when can I pull the electrons from the grid? When can I push the electrons from the grid? When can I self-generate? When can I basically cut off from the grid and just run my plant for 1 hour, 2 hours, 10 hours, whatever the resiliency need is there. That coat of intelligence on a bunch of connected distributed resources makes it a microgrid.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think that's a nice segue to our next speaker, Jennifer from Florida Power and Light. Give us your perspective, please.
Good morning, Susie. Thank you to the Chamber for asking us to participate in the panel today. It's a great honor to be here. I think customers, our 5 million customers, tend to think of FPL as their electric utility, and that's fine. But myself and the 9,000 other employees that work for FPL, we tend to think of ourselves as a technology leader that delivers power. And so our challenge is to every day look at the act of turning on the lights and think about how we can challenge ourselves to improve the way we deliver clean, reliable power that is also affordable for our 5 million customers. We're proud to be leading the solar evolution in the state. Those efforts began in 2009 with the installation of 25 megawatts at our DeSoto Energy Center. But since then, our fleet has grown to almost 38 sites across the state, producing and has a generating capacity of about 2.7 gigawatts. And we're not stopping there. We're on a mission to install 30 million solar panels by 2030 which will amount to about hundreds of different solar energy centers for the state of Florida. You're probably thinking, Gen Solar's been around for a while. It's not that innovative. Well, how about installing and operating the nation's first floating solar array at an airport, just up the street, Miami International? You heard Irene talk about it in the opening remarks. This technology is something we can use in collaboration with our community partners to potentially install solar over stormwater retention ponds or on old mining lakes, for example. Last year, we launched the largest community solar program in the country. The FPL Solar Together program is a subscription-based solar program, enabling thousands of residential and business customers to essentially go 100% solar, regardless of whether they rent or own their own facility in their own buildings. But I think the most exciting solar news is in the form of what the industry is calling green hydrogen. This technology will use solar power to run an electrolyzer that separates water into hydrogen and oxygen. We can then release the O2 harmlessly into the atmosphere. We capture what's called the green hydrogen, the leftover hydrogen, compress it and store it on site. That hydrogen can then be blended with natural gas to produce cleaner electricity than standalone natural gas production. And we believe this green hydrogen pilot that we're partaking in could be the first step to potentially unlocking a truly carbon-free energy future. The renewable and sustainable future we're all talking about here today really will depend on energy storage, and we're making a lot of advancements in that area as well. Miami-Dade County is home to the Wynwood Energy Storage Facility. This is a 10 megawatt battery designed and placed in an area that's hard to get new electricity into because of the dense population, but has an increasing load demand. And what's wonderful about this is we're able to put a battery right in the heart of the community, and with the help of a local artist, the battery is barely even noticeable. It's tucked behind a beautifully painted mural wall done by a local artist, and really fits in with the vibe and hallmark of the Wynwood area. Across the state, we're embarking on the construction of the largest integrated solar powered battery in the world. This facility will allow us to enjoy the benefits of solar even when the sun's not shining, and can power approximately 329,000 homes for about 2 hours. So I shared these examples with you because this is how we are innovating or using technology to help our customers every day enjoy the benefits of clean, reliable, and affordable electricity. And while maybe that's not as exciting as some of the other big tech companies, I assure you our commitment to these clean energy initiatives could not be more important for our climate, our state, and our children's future. And I'm proud to be part of the team that's working every day to bring this to our customers, and happy to be here today to share that with you.
Thank you, Jennifer. The more I hear from the panel and talking about really this transformation, innovation, changing the way we do things, right? To me, I can't help but think about, who's going to be doing this work, and how are folks going to be trained, and are we teaching this in the universities? And as we go into our next two speakers, Dr. Crowl from FIU, and then of course Rick from the CareerSource Florida and Workforce. I'd be curious to start thinking about, how do you take all this incredible information and innovation and really equip that next generation to do the work? So Todd, I'll start with you. If you could tell us maybe a little bit of that perspective of the universities and the training and the role that they play.
Yeah, so I really want to make 3 points. And so from the water security perspective, first and foremost, I want to remind folks that Everglades restoration is essential for us in terms of preserving our freshwater resources. Biscayne Aquifer provides most of our water for drinking, for agriculture, for everything. And we have to remember the connection, and a lot of people on the coast don't always think about this, but Everglades all the way to the west is our #1 way to be resilient against sea level rise, right? So unfortunately, we have drained the Everglades to about 2/3 of its former volume. And at the same time, sea level is rising. So we've got this pressure problem that we have to think about. Sea level's rising, Everglades are smaller, and so we are in serious danger of having saltwater intrusion into the Biscayne aquifer, right? So we need very quickly to concentrate and focus on restoring the Everglades so that we can use our fresh water to push back against our saltwater so that we don't get saltwater intrusion into our freshwater aquifer. And so that's one thing we need to really think about. The second thing is, and Arela and the mayor have already talked about this, Biscayne Bay, it sort of represents our health, wealth, and happiness, right? Those things are all sort of together. Basically, Biscayne Bay is our identity. And so one of the things that we really need to think about is what we can do to preserve Biscayne Bay. We all know what happened last summer with the fish kill. We're really worried about this summer. We've already had some oxygen sags. As Hardeep mentioned, leaks are inevitable. I mean, those, our infrastructure is aging. And so we really need to think about infrastructure. We're working very hard to create an autonomous vehicle water quality system, a monitoring system, so that we can provide real-time data to sort of track and predict what kinds of issues we have. And probably the most important thing is we're using chemical fingerprinting techniques to try to figure out where the biggest issues are with phosphorus loading into the bay, right? So we have a whole series of neighborhoods pretty far inland, actually, to the west, in which we have older houses. They're on septic systems. When it rains, the septic systems flood, the nutrients flow out, they get into the streets, they get into the stormwater drains, and ultimately they get into the bay. And that's sort of the genesis of all of our problems, right? So one of the things we really need to do is to identify those places where we're getting the most input of phosphorus and other nutrients, largely because of septic systems, and to prioritize where we put our money into infrastructure, and especially taking households, whole neighborhoods off of septic systems and onto sewer systems, right? That really needs to be our number one focus. And with the new infrastructure bills and all the discussions, we have a great opportunity, but we don't have a lot of time. And we really have to understand how important this really is to get done. And so we're working with all the agencies to try to help the municipalities and the policymakers figure out where to get us off of septic, get us onto sewer, and to minimize that. And finally, your point about education. We've probably entered the fourth industrial revolution. It's the era of artificial intelligence, right? We have a whole new way of thinking. We have new opportunities of analyzing data, of understanding how things are working. And so education is a key. And education starts from me telling my neighbors in North Coral Gables why putting fertilizer on their yard actually matters to Biscayne Bay. They don't see the bay, they don't visit the bay, they have absolutely no idea why I would think they're connected to the bay. So we really have to think hard about that education perspective of, and Hardeep mentioned this, the greater Biscayne Bay watershed is a really big place. It goes all the way to Orlando now because of our canal systems. We have to get people to understand this is all a big connected watershed, and what I do in my backyard will ultimately impact Biscayne Bay. So that's number one for education. The other part is we have to educate the next generation of students to be able to use this incredible plethora of new ways of thinking about things, of analyzing data, artificial intelligence, new sensor technology. And so I think we really need to focus hard, and I know Arela thinks really hard about this, about the education component, all the way from local communities to the next generation of students. We have to rethink how we're training students. We have to make sure that they are using all of the best technologies and approaches, and FPL, are doing that. But the universities at FIU, all of us are really thinking about what's the new education paradigm. It's not probably so much the traditional approaches, but it's really cross-disciplinary. It's really about melding knowledge of science with policy. And so that's sort of what our focus is, and that's how we're sort of re-envisioning what the next generation of students need to be empowered with. Thanks.
Rick, do you want to take it from here and kind of just continue and talk a little bit about that workforce transition, please?
Yes, actually, thank you, Todd, for the lead in, because I think some of the wonderful things that Ajay and Jennifer and Hardeep have mentioned in terms of how companies, particularly FP&L, how they really are moving forward with a different type of energy structure to help our communities thrive, but the manner in which they are designing these new initiatives, again, solar, and the types of jobs that are going to be created is how do we prepare the workforce? Again, most folks will look at why is CareerSource involved in this piece? Because as we start to tackle and again, our energy and water initiatives, how do we prepare the workforce? And so there are 3 items I would suggest that we need to do in terms of how, for the future, where the chamber should and take the lead is how we work with our school district, how we work with them to design and educate our parents, our youth, in terms of the future jobs, the jobs that are going to be available. Again, FP&L has, they're implementing these solar panel systems. So who's installing? Who are the technicians are maintaining? And where do those folks come from? And what are they, in terms of learn the skill? And so initiatives like the IBEW, they have a solar panel program that focus on enhancing youth. And we've been recruiting and partnering with the the Electrical Brotherhood of International Workers. And so we need to see how we, one, educate within our school system of the future jobs as we move towards different types of jobs in water management. Those jobs, again, folks are changing. Again, how are we going to ensure that companies are resilient, but also the workforce becomes resilient? Let me share with you, Deloitte had produced a survey. It was their 2020 Global Human Capital Trends Survey. And 53% of the respondents, of the companies that responded, said between half and all of their workforce will need to change their skills. And so as we look for the future and as we challenge and tackle the challenges faced for our community in terms of resilience, how do we prepare our workforce? So we as workforce, we're a board that makes the investment. So I want to put the challenge out to our resilient community in this committee to see how we can look at, again, tackling the issues in terms of our environmental, but then how do we address it in terms of the changes in the skill sets of the individuals who have to implement those changes. So working with our school district, ensuring that our future workforce becomes and are aware of the types of jobs that are available. The second component is how then we work with our post-secondary education providers, working with the University of, an FIU, University of Miami. And again, I would mention our members of our academic council here in Miami-Dade County, but also particularly designing programs so they're gonna be short-term and real-time. So when I look at Miami-Dade College, again, having them at the table to design short-term initiatives that can bleed in and provide the initial skill sets, but we have an articulation agreement with FIU and the other institutions so that they can continue their education to further their skill sets to help, again, that company make the transition. The other piece is how companies themselves design and implement in-house or apprenticeship models that will help build the skill sets of their existing workforce. And again, based on a survey by Deloitte, the companies to be resilient during these times of change, particularly because of the pandemic, we need to see how we reskill, retool our workforce to address the needs of that company so that they can continue to thrive. And so it's going to take an investment of all of us, whether it's private sector, public, but we have to design and develop programs that will help address these potential skills and the skills needs. Again, the solar panels and the implementation, the water hydraulics that Ajay had mentioned, where are those folks coming from and how do we train them? So this is where the partnerships with the chamber, with post-secondary education, and more importantly, early education is going to become key in how those jobs are filled for the future. And so I'll leave it at that and turn it back over to you, Susie.
Thank you so much. I actually starting to see questions coming in from our audience, and one I think fits nicely here. But it's a question to all the panelists, so please just let me know who wants to take it first. And it's how are you planning to work with entrepreneurs to design and implement innovative solutions? And do you currently work with any startups? So any takers on that one?
Susie, I can take it if that's okay.
Perfect.
So I think I take that also as an opportunity for putting a plug for the work we're doing as Miami-Dade Water and Sewer. I'm very pleased to say that we are on that innovation track as it relates to the county and Miami-Dade Water in particular. We actually partnered up with a company called Chemergy. You can call it a startup, but it's extremely innovative. And what makes it even more interesting is it's funded with a grant of about $1.15 million from the DEP. Mm-hmm. And Ajay talked about net zero. Jennifer talked about hydrogen as a fuel. Basically, what this technology is all about, it's a hydrogen bromine electrolysis technology, which will take biosolids as they are today, as you know from our wastewater treatment plant. It's land applied and it's got all the negative impacts of nutrient runoff, pollution, water bodies, ecosystems. And it goes through this whole bromination process where the end product is basically green hydrogen. And then that could be used as a commodity or as a fuel. So it's a process in the making, and it's a year-long pilot test. So we are very excited. We see some great results and happy to share that as we go in the future.
Thank you, Hardeep. Anyone else have something to add to that one, please?
Yeah, this is Ajay. Yeah, at Black & Veatch, innovation is key. So we are investing in innovation, and in fact, we have a growth accelerator team that frequently has these programs where new ideas are encouraged, and spawning out of those are investments in new technologies. We're already working on the Hyperloop. There is a group that's working on floating housing solutions. We have a next gen agriculture team. So we are trying to see and be ahead of the curve so that what are those new things beyond the line of visual sight, and invest in some of those either both internally or with startups. And it's truly an exciting time.
Excellent. And I think Jennifer wanted to add a little bit too.
Yes, in 2020, we launched our 35 Mules initiative, which is an innovation hub helping entrepreneurs and startups get off the ground and help bring new businesses in renewable and sustainable generation, to our great state. And that's one of the ways that we look to help entrepreneurs come into the state and do business here with us and further this mission that we're on. I think that's one of the examples of how we're participating with entrepreneurs.
And I'll just add, we're working with a whole series of small startups across the country to develop affordable sensors so that we can measure water quality in not just Biscayne Bay and South America and Africa, so people can understand whether the water is drinkable, et cetera. And we have to empower folks to be able to deploy those sensors, to get the data and to understand those data. And through our Center of Excellence in Research and Technology, our CREST Center, I think many of you have heard about, we're actually spawning a whole series of startups from our students. So we have students who have developed their own sensors. We have a water wand where people can go measure sea level rise, look at salinity in the streets, and help us sort of map and come up with a vulnerability index. Somebody developed a watch that measures UV radiation and heat. so that folks don't have heat exhaustion. So, and then we're working with a group of folks through Albert on EcoCrete. So it's a concrete that actually absorbs carbon dioxide. We're trying to use that if we're going to build seawalls, if we're going to put in things along the Miami River, we should use stuff that absorbs carbon dioxide and helps us in the long run. So we're working with a whole series of small startups.
Excellent, thank you. And we have another question that came in about reaching carbon-free electricity as soon as possible, right? And how that's essential to reaching Paris Climate Accord goals, reducing the risk of extreme climate change. The question is for FP&L, but I also want to ask Hardeep, how does FP&L plan to address this challenge, especially in light of Biden's goal of carbon-free electricity by 2035? So I'll ask Jennifer to take that, but Hardeep, that also made me think about what you mentioned at the beginning about your work with the U.S. Department of Energy and the SWIFT Accelerator. And, I'd be curious what your thoughts are about looking to reach net zero. So first, Jennifer, and then Hardeep, please.
Great, thank you. Happy to share this question with you, Hardeep. I'll take my piece, you take yours. That seems like a fair split. I think our solar initiatives and the battery storage stuff I talked about is already well on its way. We're learning a lot from those things. We have lots of different ways to deploy that technology, and we'll look to continue to do that. You heard me talk about our 30 by 30 plan and some of those battery projects. I think the next great step is the green hydrogen thing that I mentioned. This is a new pilot for us. And we really believe by taking this first step, by understanding how we can use hydrogen with natural gas first, will help us better understand how to use hydrogen and use that technology. And we think this is probably the thing that can get us to that 2030 goal that President Biden is talking about. So a big team of folks focused on that for our customers and for the future. And we believe that's the path.
Thank you. Hardeep, do you want to tell us a little bit about that that experience?
Yes.
Reaching those goals?
Yes, absolutely. So I think, Susie, generally speaking, the accelerator's role is precisely, in terms of helping guide utilities in developing these plans, right? But if we take a real deep dive into the operations that we have a lot of opportunities. For example, we have an 8 megawatt cogen plant. That's the total capacity. We are probably using 2 to 3 megawatts at the moment. But looking and exploring at other sources of, opportunities, landfill gas becomes another resource, right? So how do you integrate that is something that is all in the works. But I think generally speaking, if you have to achieve these wider, larger, loftier goals, it'll take more of us, right? It'll take more of these utilities to come online. And how do we, I think the challenge then becomes is, we talked about education, but we also have to start thinking, I think, about scalability of the work that we are doing within our footprint, and how do we become mentors or role models to maybe other utilities who might not be able to engage on those along those lines because of resources, and so on and so forth. So the accelerator, the DOE, comes in extremely handy that way. It's a free resource. We don't pay anything to be a part of the accelerator, and you get a whole set of resources. I believe even the Oak Ridge National Laboratories is a part of that effort. We have the University of Miami's industrial accelerator here right in our backyard. And so those things become extremely beneficial to us. Just a quick share with another innovative effort that we are making with the Water Research Foundation is, there's a lot of digestion that happens from our wastewater as it enters our treatment plant. So the opportunity to mine methane gases at the headworks before it goes through the entire treatment train of a wastewater treatment process. How do you mine methane there? And is there an opportunity to then take that and put it through the system, for obviously the net zero effect? I was reading on the chat, someone from Turner talked about 1,200 green building projects, redirected 3 million tons of construction debris from landfills. All of these elements, again, takes us back to the big picture of scalability. but then sharing these models across the construction industry, across the utility industries, and across all of the other potential partners, I think will make that difference ultimately.
Great, thanks, Hardeep. Ajay, I have a question for you. You've piqued someone's interest about floating housing. And if you could expand on that a little bit, please.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So we have actually a growth accelerator team that is looking at floating housing, because as the real estate kind of on the ground shrinks, we're looking at basically huge barges, converted ships to basically house float, apartments or residences, but all of that requires infrastructure. So how do you bring in the water treatment, wastewater treatment, the energy, which is all our core. So we are trying to see how to solve a problem that may happen 5-10 years from now, starting today. So that is an innovation project that is currently happening in our growth accelerator team, and they're looking at piloting some sites, and this is being led out of our team in California, and it's basically confluence of, again, water, energy, Nexus for an innovative solution that seems to be that would solve the problem of real estate on the ground in concentrated locations where there's not enough real estate, but using the water surface area that's available to see if, so the business case is being worked on right now, and we'll see what the outcome of that is going to be.
Excellent. And so I do want to stay with you, because going back to the microgrids, right? And I'm thinking that Hardeep might want to jump in on this one too, but do you see opportunities for revenue generation for water and wastewater utilities with microgrids and with new fuels such as hydrogen?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think immediately I'll take it on first, and Hardeep, please feel free to interject after me. Yeah, most definitely there is an immediate opportunity, and then there's a long-term opportunity. So the immediate opportunity is basically, from a resiliency perspective, if you're working with the local electric utility, or if you're doing it yourself, or you're bringing a third party, that's the business case aspect of it. But from a purely the technology perspective, yes, we already have mature technologies like distributed solar, recip engines, fuel cells, on-site generation to potentially, generate those electrons and potentially green electrons, and then work not only to give you, whatever is a host site, the resiliency, but also have a broader community benefit. Some of the stuff was actually looked at as part of the New York Prize in New York also, where community microgrids were actually encouraged. So it results in public-private partnership opportunities. So you host the infrastructure, and then the benefit is not only to you, but around. And then the electric utility is wheeling those electrons. So everybody has a piece and a stake and a potential, either a cost saving or a revenue, and ultimately benefits, right? So that's an immediate one. But down the line, we're also seeing, pilot projects happening in Europe and Australia, where gray water can be used for electrolysis, right? And then you can create, hydrogen. The biogas, you can use, biogas is green methane. So you're not using fossil methane, but green methane. And then if you do steam methane reforming, and whatever is the parasitic load for the process, if that is furnished by renewable energy, then you truly have green hydrogen. So there is a potential, and again, collaboration with fleets around you, which may be looking at fuel cell buses, or transportation fleets that are looking at fuel cell trucks. So there is an opportunity to create this fuel, that green fuel that the new customers are going to buy. And so it's a potential, it's a revenue potential. So all of these are short-term, and then 5-10 years down the line revenue potential. That's what I'm seeing.
Excellent, thank you. Hardeep, did you want to chime in? Because I just thought of that kind of that notion of generating revenue for the utility would pique your interest.
Oh, absolutely. I think, Susie, our first goal would be obviously to become energy neutral, right? Because we are dependent on other systems at the moment. And then that ties into becoming, resilient in the form, like Ajay had said about how do you store energy on site, and there are so many opportunities. So not to be selfish, but to the extent we can take the intrinsic value of resources that we have, we manage, we treat, then our goal will be to see how we minimize or become energy neutral, right? $30 million annually. If that becomes zero, that's a huge accomplishment. And that's savings to the bottom line of the utility, ultimately to the taxpayers and the ratepayers. Eventually, as technologies mature, systems become more efficient, yes, I think there's an opportunity to translate that into revenue sources as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Hardeep. And I had an earlier question here from our Q&A chat. What is the impact of ocean acidification on the water table? I'm thinking maybe Todd wants to take a stab at that.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what the connection is with the water table. I mean, ocean acidification is certainly having a big impact on our reefs, seagrass beds, and stuff like that. I'm not actually, I don't know that I understand what the direct connection to the water table would be, but one of the things we have to understand is a place like North Biscayne Bay, because we've lost much of the seagrass, that's what's making it so vulnerable to all the phosphorus inputs and stuff like that. So ocean acidification certainly is exacerbating those impacts. And so we really need to think about the sort of conservation and restoration of our green infrastructure. One of the things I like to bring up is lots of people think of infrastructure as hard engineering solutions. It's bridges, it's roads, it's seawalls. We have to understand that one of our best defenses against things like storm surge, hurricanes, and flooding are things like mangroves, coral reefs, seagrass beds. And so when we talk about infrastructure and infrastructure restoration and enhancing infrastructure, let's think about bringing back our green infrastructure as one of the most economically viable alternatives. There are a series of studies. One of the studies I absolutely love, the Nature Conservancy published a paper published a report that showed that if you have a home that is behind a mangrove, an extant mangrove forest, you will suffer 25% less damage, both physically and economically, from storm surge and winds, because those mangroves sort of help buffer all of those impacts. So we need to think about sort of what's the biggest bang for your buck: mangroves, seagrasses, and coral reefs. And ocean acidification certainly is one of the things we need to think about.
You know, Todd, I couldn't agree more. And one of the neat things of the where I'm at right now, having left local government, sitting in Jacobs and working in other places, one of the projects I've worked on last year was actually in the Florida Panhandle. The Tyndall Air Force Base got devastated by Hurricane Michael. They made a commitment to make the installation of the future. And so Jacobs has been working with them on a lot of those different projects. But what I've been plugged into, which is fascinating, is the nature-based coastal resilience projects, defending the base and building resilience not only on the base, but layers of protection around the surrounding community as well. And so there's some really neat work that Jacobs has been doing. And in fact, we're going to be publishing a book with the Army Corps over the summer on engineering with nature. And so I couldn't agree more that is infrastructure. That's something that is important. And quite frankly, it's also something the community wants. I think that everybody who's probably on the call has the same feelings that you have about Biscayne Bay and doing everything we can and finding those solutions. But I do want to stay with you, Todd, and I'm curious about kind of your thoughts about how do we start to pay for all this infrastructure and restoration activities that are just so important right now?
Yeah, so that's one of our, I think one of our biggest challenges, and that's the reason we're sort of launching this environmental finance program. There has always been a disconnect between sort of our financial instruments and ecosystem services and restoration and conservation. So if I'm a developer, I come in, I invest lots of money, good for the community, good for the folks, and I build a high rise. I get my money out in about 5 years. The impacts of those extra human beings, of the extra wastewater and all that stuff isn't really felt for 10 years or 15 years. And so there's this huge difference in time lag from what financial inputs and outputs are versus our ecosystem services. If you're watching the Office of Science and Technology in the White House right now, they're arguing that besides entering the era of artificial intelligence, we are entering the era of the bioeconomy. That is, we are absolutely dependent on ecosystems and biology to drive our economy. It's crops, it's water security, it's everything you can possibly think about. Health, medicine, all of that stuff. And so one of the things I think we really should concentrate on is how do we get the financial instruments and the financial side of us to participate in the conservation restoration efforts. You know, the Everglades went from $6 billion to $10 billion to I don't know how many billions of dollars it's ultimately going to take to fix it. Should that really just be taxpayer money, or should it be people buying into the idea that the Everglades is essential for the security of our fresh water? Fresh water is gonna, I mean, without fresh water, South Florida goes away. Our whole economy collapses. And so what we really need to do is get folks to say, I'm gonna bet on Everglades restoration as the way to conserve our fresh water, to maintain water security, and to maintain the health and well-being of our economics in South Florida. And so that connection we really need to think about. And one of the examples I use is that Europe has done a really good job associated with things like earthquakes. So they've created these catastrophic bond markets. And so people will put money into this bond and they're betting that there won't be any earthquakes. And so they get their dividends, they make their money. But if an earthquake happens, those investments go back to the communities to help rebuild it, right? And so it's time for us to bet on the bioeconomy, to bet on ecosystem services, and to actually start investing in what is going to keep us here from a resilience perspective in the long haul.
That's great, thank you. We're getting a lot of questions in our chat box here, and I'm gonna, since I'm the moderator, I get to choose. So I'm going to go to a question from a former Miami Beach colleague. And so hi, Carlos. The question is for all the panelists, really. I see everyone is talking about great initiatives around energy, water, transportation, etc. However, I would like to hear about the panelists' position on more integrated systems to leverage all the data and the information being generated holistically, and the concepts of smart cities, smart districts, and things like that. So I'm going to open that up for who wants to jump on that, because I think that's a really interesting question.
Yeah, well, I'll start, and again, I'll anchor it my comments on Biscayne Bay. We have a lot of really terrific data. WASB, Durham, DEP, South Florida Water Management District, all the resiliency groups. We collect a ton of data on water quality and impacts in Biscayne Bay. What we haven't been very good at doing is pulling all of that data together, truly understanding what those data are telling us in terms of sources and what the different events are that are creating the impacts, like the fish kill last year, and really digging deep. And again, artificial intelligence, machine learning, we have an opportunity. But I think pulling all of those data together, and it's just not the physical and biological data, but the socioeconomic data, the socio-political data, that's really a big challenge we have. And I know Arela thinks a lot about that. And we're really trying to wrap our heads around how we pull all this information together. And one of the examples I'd like to use again around North Biscayne Bay is, if you look at the demographics, the socioeconomics of Biscayne Bay, the folks who live on the beach, the folks who live in the bay are higher income, They're highly educated. The homes they are in are relatively new. If you go inland to the west, Little Haiti and different places, those homes are old. They're on septic systems. The income of those folks is, somewhere below $50,000. And yet that is the source of much of our pollution coming into the Bay. They don't understand it, they don't know it, and it's not really their responsibility. So we have to think about this social justice part of what it is we're trying to fix in terms of South Florida, Biscayne Bay, and water security. And it takes all of those data coming together from a holistic perspective. So whoever asked that question, what are we doing? You're dead on that we have to concentrate really hard on pulling all the information we have together and making that available and empowering our citizens to understand all of these connections. It's a really complicated system.
Absolutely. And Todd, a lot of the things that you mentioned are in the Biscayne Bay Task Force report that's on the chat. So anybody who wants to see it. Yeah. It's a great question. Who else wants to give that one a...
Yeah, I'll take a crack at it. And just like smart cities, the equivalent on the water side, we've started calling it smart water for quite some time, right? And the question is about, yes, big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning. But I also feel that we've got to take several steps back to see, are we really collecting the right data? What's that quality of the data, right? And where are the gaps? So if you start looking at One Water, you start looking at an integrated watershed where you have local cities, local governments, municipalities, everybody coming together because water has no boundaries. So who's collecting what data, in what format is it sitting, where is it sitting, from legacy systems to Excel spreadsheets to state-of-the-art systems? So cleaning that whole ecosystem of big data, putting some governance around it, and then being able to share it is one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is drawing insights from that data, then making decisions for today, predicting something for tomorrow, so that systems, if they are going to fail based on how Dr. Todd described about machine learning and AI, the predictability of the data in order to make sure that we are not caught unaware and we are reacting before time becomes obviously important. And then the futuristic side of planning for our assets for the next 25 years, the next 100 years, because water assets are not having a lifespan of 2 years or 3 years. This is 50 years, 100 years assets lifespan, right? So all of this comes together in a concept that most of you might have heard, at least in our business and in the electric business also, is the concept of a digital twin. So when you bring these systems together, then you are able to start having that conversation of a digital twin. So one of the efforts I'm trying to champion is, how do we create a digital twin of our largest pump station, right? We've got 1,050 stations. If we can create that with all the elements that I described behind it, then that is when it becomes a smart water system, which kind of complements a smart city system.
If I may add, Susie, what we call a Black and Veatch is a smart integrated infrastructure. So from a technology standpoint, you're going to start seeing sensors across the entire infrastructure, right? So you can see that right from measuring, analyzing, connecting, talking to each other. But what that also does is it also, what we have heard, from all these cyber attacks and everything, the cyber infrastructure becomes extremely important. So we need to start looking at how to protect that infrastructure as we start making things more and more smarter. And so that is another key aspect of this whole integrated infrastructure that includes water, energy, and telecommunications. So all the three of them are closely linked. And it all begins from a planning perspective. So if a city or a municipality or a group of organizations are getting together, just like how at a wastewater treatment plant or water treatment plant, you do an energy master plan or a biosolids plan, this is basically a master plan. Where do I see my community growing in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? And what kind of infrastructure that I need to start planning for now? How do I get it funded? Who are the other partners that are willing to play a role in it, the public-private partnership. So all of those things are key because the technologies are there for, we just have to figure out the best way to connect all of them from a business case perspective and just create the plan and start executing the plan. But cybersecurity is also going to be super key as we get more smarter.
Jen Schaffer, I agree with that. At FPL, we started installing smart meters back in 2009. Today, we have, I think, something like 5 million smart meters and nearly 200,000 intelligent devices along the grid. We started doing that, when smart technology, smartphones, right, were just kind of starting to get their start, and a lot of people, including ourselves, didn't really know how we would use that technology. Today, we depend on that technology. We have artificial intelligence that helps us use that data to predict load and usage, to predict outages, so we can get ahead of those things. And so it's proving to be very valuable for how we run our business and how we supply our customers with the electricity they depend on. I think the next piece is how you ended, is how do we group that information together as government entities, as private entities, as consumers, and get smarter about using the electricity and using our resources in the best way possible.
I can't help but thinking that everything that we've been talking about for almost an hour, at the end of the day, we need people, right? And again, going back to that workforce, and there's a question in the chat for the group, right? That says, and Rick, you kind of alluded to this. Has South Florida considered an educational curriculum which can be implemented into our education system? While water is our most important survival resource, our children and their limitless imaginations are our most precious resource. And so Rick, maybe going back to you and maybe thinking again about those strategies that you're working with about creating a resilient workforce, please.
And this is what I mentioned, Susie, I think it's a great question that, we're addressing resiliency on, from an industry's perspective of what we have to do to ensure our environment, but we really haven't looked at resiliency in terms of the workforce and what we need to do. And I think the chamber, because we're taking the lead, this is our 5th year of looking at this and very serious about it. The other component is how we look at preparing our future workforce by working with our public school system. And it really is going to take a commitment from the chamber, from our business community, as well as from our mayor's office, but also from the school board, and trying to look at the occupations that will be there for the future. And there, keep in mind, as technology changes, there's going to be other jobs that, that we really have not thought about. But educating our parents and our youth and looking at what the potential jobs could be and designing. And I think, again, you have FP&L, you have Black and Veek and others on this summit discussion of how we can get them together to work with the chamber and others of having that conversation on what programs we can design for our school system to prepare for our future workforce. The opportunities are limitless that if we just put a seed in the child's mind, here's what the potentials could be. And so we really need to look at how we partner with our early childcare, as well as secondary, and then our post-secondary. Because again, we need to engage our school system, but also our post-secondary, FIU, to Miami-Dade College, to University of Miami, and looking at, again, the occupations that are going to be there for the future, because it's not just about growing our talent, but it's also making sure that they're trained so that our companies can thrive. And so it's going to take all of us. And I think the first strategy is that we're having this discussion, but then this committee needs to take a look at how we move it beyond, not just a discussion, but we move it beyond that we can implement the conversation with our school system to build our future jobs and our future talent pool.
That's perfect. Thank you, Rick.
Can I add something? So from the university perspective, Universities have a long history of creating curricula, of educating and training folks based on sort of what we think and what we believe folks should know. I'm not so sure we have been very good at listening and asking people what they want to know, or what they don't know, or what they actually prioritize as being important. And so I think we have to flip this whole sort of education paradigm and get into the communities and say, what is it you understand in South Florida, especially about climate change? What is it you understand about sea level rise and fresh water? And what don't you understand? And what do you need to know? And so I think we really need to sort of flip things and get more community engagement and more community driven sort of education programs. And they probably shouldn't be in single departments and colleges, but sort of university-wide programs that are driven by the community. And a state university like Florida International, I think we have to do a better job of listening and engaging in the community, and us being engaged in what it is we need to sort of think about and what we need to do to empower the citizens.
Actually, that's good. That's great, Todd. We have about 5 minutes left, and I was going to ask each of you for some parting thoughts. After an hour-long conversation, listening to the other panelists, kind of what were your key takeaways or any kind of final thoughts you want to leave for our audience that has been very actively engaged in the chat? And we didn't get to all the questions, but maybe there's a way of answering those questions online somehow. I'll leave that to the organizers. But let me just kind of go around the room. My box is there, and Jennifer, you're on top. What are your final thoughts?
I think that the solution to finding our carbon-free future and having resilient cities and being sustainable lies in panels like this and the communities working together. And so just very honored to be able to come and share with you some of the things that we're doing and how we're looking ahead to be a part of the solution and to continue to provide you with the best energy value in America. And I think there were some questions. If the group wants to circulate them to the extent we can answer, certainly we do that. But I appreciate everyone's time and their thoughts today, and happy to be a part of the discussion.
Thank you, Ajay.
Yes, thank you once again, Susie, and Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce. Yeah, this is truly an interesting time for all of us to pull together and for the common, betterment of our community in our cities. We just bring in the energy. We all have a common goal, actually. And so this is, which is infrastructure, greening of that infrastructure, providing resilient infrastructure, and providing infrastructure that is smart. And all of those three things is achievable as long as we all pull together. And that's the next 5-10 years. I'm just looking forward to be part of this amazing transition, and looking forward to working with all of you on that. And thank you.
Thank you so much. Rick?
Well, first, let me say thank you to Jennifer, to Ajay, to Hardeep, and to Todd. To sit back and hear your thoughts and the direction where we're going. Honestly, I'm excited because of the conversation. I'm excited about what we can do. And I think, Ajay, you mentioned about, the enthusiasm and the energy. I'd like to charge the committee and challenge the committee. And Susie, I think we really need to, pick your brain as well. And thank you for moderating. I think Rod and are fearless, really, that you all have put together this summit. But it's not just about the discussion. It's like, what action can we do? Hearing what you've discussed, I really like to see that we can take some action and to advocate the various changes because of the summit, what we can do to really enhance and build our community. So I thank you all for allowing me to share a couple of thoughts of how we build talent, but everything has to be holistic. And so again, I thank you guys for your participation, your words, your wisdom, and Susie, thank you for moderating. But the challenge for us today is not just the summit and discussion, it's how do we implement and how can we advocate some of the initiatives and discussions that you all have brought out today.
Excellent. And Todd, I'm going to ask Hardeep to go last because you gave some really great comments right there about listening to the community, and I want that to sit and resonate. Hardeep, you have a minute. Can you do it?
Yes, here it goes. Bringing it all together, Susie, from a community perspective, you were a part of the 100RC, Rockefeller, Nicole, myself, we worked a lot on it. And I think we need to bring resiliency metrics to the forefront to connect our efforts globally, holistically, everything that we talked about back in terms of performance, because we ultimately have to make sure that the dollars we're spending is actually translating into quality of life and all of those dimensions that we covered as part of the 100RC. And I think that data side, which we talked about, needs to connect to the metrics at the end. Of course, we need creative financing opportunities because that's the only way to make resiliency happen. And financing then becomes a part of the metrics so that we become accountable to the dollars we're spending, whether it comes from PPP or whether it comes from our taxpayers. And then the last point I want to make is on education. I'm passionate about it. I want to add and complement Rick's challenge to the committee, which is about business partners in the industry across the board. How do we bring practitioners into the workforce is very important. While we work with the younger workforce coming into the workforce, we also have a whole aging, retiring workforce that's leaving us. And there's a whole lot of brain drain that is going there. So let's not forget about it. Let's try to capture it. We are in the digital world. And Rick, I'm going to reach out to you to brainstorm on that. So thank you again, the Chamber and Susie.
Thank you so much. And how do you thank people virtually? Thank you very much, my panel. You were excellent. It was wonderful to see everyone and be back in Miami for a little while. I'm going to wrap it up now and actually ask that we hear from our sponsors at this point. My colleague from Jacobs, Alberto Lázaro, is going to make a few remarks, and then Amy Pastor from EXP. So Alberto, you are up next. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Let me know when you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Can you see my screen too?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for the Chamber for the opportunity to be part of this great event. At Jacobs, we are challenging today to reinvent tomorrow. We help our clients across all markets to prepare and respond to natural, societal, and economic risks. We have over 50 years experience helping clients with solutions, not only in the typical engineering, planning, and designing spaces, but also with response, recovery, and all through the lifespan of assets. We use the One Water approach to address sustainability in water and energy. We don't only have experts addressing climate change or water reuse, for example, but we also look at other outside the box approaches, such as fixing flood insurance premiums or making the economic case for improving water quality in the environment. Two examples of our water energy innovations. First, the Tuas Water Reclamation Facility in Singapore was the first greenfield development to double the energy recovered from wastewater and produces ultra clean reclaimed water for reuse in industry and domestic drinking water. The second example here is from Denmark, the Beyond Energy Neutrality Program. It's a water reclamation facility that produces 150% of its own energy and produces surplus heat for the surrounding community. Both projects inject energy back to the grid and have won several international awards. And Jacob is not only global, but it's also local. Here are some examples of the leading edge resilient innovations in Florida. Some of my favorites are the Miami Beach Integrated Water Strategy, which is taking off with blue-green infrastructure. We also supported Super Bowl 55 with the cybersecurity measures to protect the water system. With the Nature Conservancy, we've helped plan living shorelines and nature-based coastal defenses in Miami. And last, Susie mentioned the Tyndall Air Force Base in the Panhandle. which was devastated by Hurricane Michael. We helped plan the base of the future with resiliency, sustainability, and smart system. The project won the American Planning Association's Outstanding Federal Planning Project this year. We're excited to be here and to help the Reimaging Resilience. Here are some of us you can contact. Feel free to shoot us an email. Just use firstname.lastname@jacobs.com. I want to highlight our newest addition to the team, Jonah Lehman, who recently joined the team, and some of you may know. We look forward to continue supporting the Chamber and congratulate you for the event. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Amy Pastor, and I am the Director of Commissioning and Sustainability for EXP. We can honestly say that we are here today for one reason: to build a better tomorrow for our future generations. More importantly, we want to have that impact right here in our local community. As professionals, we understand that coastal resiliency, energy and water conservation, and infrastructure reliability are all critical design elements that must be considered with each new site, building, bridge, or roadway. At EXP, we have provided innovative, creative, and sustainable solutions for the built environment around the world for over 115 years. We have been making those same impacts in Florida for over 40 years, in the public and private sectors, and in the hospitality, entertainment, higher education, science and technology, multifamily residential, and mission-critical markets. We are most proud of our local work and our local partners. Whether it's providing lead administration and future commissioning for the FIU International Center for Tropical Botany, strategically planning, documenting, and pre-certifying a neighborhood in downtown Doral, creating a better home environment for the residences of the Modera Metro Phase 1 and Phase 2 apartments, or combining all of those efforts into one project at the Plaza Coral Gables, EXP is taking a stand against climate change and collaboratively reducing the impacts that our buildings have on the environment. I look forward to transforming tomorrow, today, with all of you. Thank you.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Okay, well, I can't believe we're in our final session already today. It's gone by so fast, and just we've had such tremendous panels today. Thank you, everyone. It's been so incredibly interesting, and I can't wait to follow up with so many of you. So for our final session today, we have two distinguished guests who are going to provide a legislative wrap-up, which is extremely timely considering Governor DeSantis just 2 days ago signed the statewide flooding and sea level rise resilience bill into law. This bill is historic not only because of the tremendous investment, over $600 million, but also because it creates a framework for a cohesive, coordinated approach to address the impacts of sea level rise, intensified storms, and localized flooding. And for the first time, we'll really provide communities with resources they need for true resilience planning and actual project implementation. So truly very groundbreaking indeed. With us today to talk about this groundbreaking bill and other important legislation is Garrett Wallace, who's the Government Relations Manager for the Florida chapter of the Nature Conservancy and oversees conservation policy in Tallahassee and Washington, D.C. He joined the Nature Conservancy in 2016 and is an experienced professional in conservation issues working with federal, state, nonprofits, and corporate entities. He's worked extensively with federal interests throughout his career, securing funding to preserve over 40,000 acres of Florida ranch land into the USDA Wetland Reserve Program, and served as the Director of Federal and Tribal Affairs for the South Florida Water Management District, representing Everglades Restoration in Washington, D.C. Also with us today, someone from right here in Miami-Dade County, Representative Demi Busada Cabrera, who lives right here and is representing District 114. She earned a bachelor's degree from Florida State University, and her career experience includes working as the Chief of Staff for State Senator Anater Flores and as statewide coordinator for the Senate Page program for high school students with the Office of the Senate Sergeant at Arms. As a Florida native who grew up enjoying our tremendous natural resources, she understands the importance of protecting these natural treasures, as well as the threat that sea level rise poses, not only for coastal communities, but for our entire state. That is why she made it one of her first priorities to sponsor this complex bill and make it a reality. And as she so clearly stated just 2 days ago, sea level rise and flooding do not care who you are or which zip code you live in. It affects all Floridians. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Garrett and Senator Cabrera, Busada Cabrera. Thank you.
Nicole, thank you so much. And please let me take a moment and thank the Greater Miami Chamber for this opportunity today. And Representative Busada Cabrera, welcome. We're so happy you're here, and thank you for your time and all of your amazing work from this past session. If I can just add a couple of points to Nicole's great introduction to you. I'd just also like to point out Rep. Busada Cabrera was first elected in November of 2020 to the Florida House of Representatives and serves on the Joint Administrative Procedures Committee, the Judiciary Committee, Criminal Justice and Public Safety, Ag Natural Resources Appropriations Subcommittee, the Environment, Agriculture and Flooding Subcommittee, and then the Finance and Facilities Subcommittee. So Representative Busada Cabrera, thank you so much again. If I can just take a moment, a personal privilege, it was an honor to actually get to watch you on television at the Governor's News Conference with our very own Rod Braun there. And it was an awesome, awesome day. And we just thank you so much for your work. And if Representative, I'd like to turn the floor over to you for your opening remarks, if that'd be okay.
No, thank you so much for having me today. Thank you for all the work that you guys have been doing. It's incredible. I'm still a little bit in shock of everything that we've been able to accomplish this year. I think that it's quite amazing to see, Florida at the forefront of this issue. And as I said the other day, I think it's been long overdue that as a state, we have some sort of plan to combat flooding and sea level rise. It's always been something that's incredibly important to me and important to the community, but really at the end of the day, it affects all Floridians. This is a Floridian issue by all means of the imagination, whether you are in a coastal community or an inland community, it affects each of us. This is the first time that we've really taken a statewide approach. So a lot of our local communities, local coalitions, things like that, regional coalitions, they've been doing a great job. They really have. And, the legislation is designed to empower our local governments and our local coalitions. And that's why, we've set up that we would provide funding as a state to our local communities, and they'll be submitting plans to DEP and requests, and we'll go from there. We have to make sure we have a 3-year plan each year that DEP will submit to the legislature, because this is a long-term issue. This isn't something that's a one and done and we just provide a lump sum of funding each year and that's it. No, this is a long-term plan and definitely looking into the future. Oh, can't hear you.
Great, sorry about that. I'm trying to I need one of those signs that says you're on mute. Well, when we talk about the bill itself, there are so many great things. And if you don't mind, I'd love for you to elaborate a little bit more, because I think the regional collaboration component is something that is such an innovative and something TNC very much championed and support. Can you talk a little bit about how you think we're going to be able to equitably fund across the state through our collaborative efforts that has been so successful so far?
Definitely. So there is a 4-tier system in place in the bill that requires DEP to assess the funding requests for the grants to, for resiliency for our local communities and regions. So they have to, follow this 4-tier system to make sure that, we're putting the money in the right place. Now, the first part of this is that we need to do a statewide assessment. This has never been done before. So first, we need to understand what we're looking at and what we need to do. And part of that is that our local municipalities, regional areas, they can apply if they need to for grant funding to be able to do this assessment. They'll submit their assessment to DEP, and then DEP will go through and all of the projects, they'll follow the 4-tier system and go from there of how they're going to allocate the $100 million annually. Now we, throughout the committee process, we did some amendments that, recognizes that some communities are financially disadvantaged. So we put language in there to make sure that, those communities that are financially disadvantaged, we won't hold that against them, if they need the funds to build a more resilient community, because we want to make sure at the end of the day that our state as a whole is resilient and can combat flooding and sea level rise.
That's great. Thank you. And I just want to kind of highlight the point you made about having a comprehensive plan. I think that is something that you're going to see support across the board on from so many folks, because we've always never really had the starting line. You know what I mean? It's like, where do we actually start? And having this report and this study to set our data so that everything is established, I think will be a really important factor for us to move forward. So yeah. This is an amazing success. And can you share with us, what's next? Where are we going to go? Because you mentioned this isn't one and done. So would you mind sharing with us where we think we can go for the next year and the years to come?
No, definitely. So, the first thing we need to do, like you said, is have a baseline. Everyone is kind of like, okay, well, how do we do this? How do we build more resilient communities? Well, that's why we created the legislation, is to figure out how to do that, to really, have a holistic approach as a state. So the first thing that is going to happen is we're going to have, our local communities are going to be submitting, their assessment to DEP, and then we would go from there. And like I said, DEP will need to submit to the legislature annually a 3-year plan. So each year they'll submit a 3-year plan. So that way we make sure that we are continuing to look into the future. So, we don't catch ourselves off guard. Things are constantly changing. Our environment, our communities are constantly changing. So this is ever evolving. I think that, we are in a great position now to build upon this. But I'm excited for our, local communities to really be able to take advantage of everything that this bill has to offer.
That's awesome. Thank you. And if I can, for our attendees on the meeting, please do, if you have questions for Representative USADA Cabrera, please take a moment and place them in the Q&A tab. We'll be happy to get to those as we continue down our process. One thing, though, I'd like to continue to talk about a little bit more was the innovation that was included in your bill regarding some of our natural climate solutions challenges that we face. And we were so happy to see that included as part of the ranking. The Nature Conservancy and so many of our partners here with the Chamber have really worked to grow an understanding, because I think so many folks didn't really understand the beginning of natural climate solutions. So as we're looking for ways to marry the gray and the green infrastructure, is this bill going to help us find path forward to incorporate and embrace some of the evolving technologies that we've got down the line?
Yes, definitely. So we, part of the bill is we created the Florida Flood Hub for Applied Research. That's going to be housed at the USF St. Pete campus. They're doing amazing work there. Part of creating that research center is looking at these, technologies and where we can go from there and how we can, incorporate them and work them into our plans as not only local communities, but in our statewide assessments and our statewide plan. I know that we've had some legislation in the past that has also, looked at those things specifically. Representative Vansalupis, he's based here in Miami. He borders my district on the west side. He has been an amazing partner and advocate for our environment and, natural resources and things like that and new technologies. So he is someone who also has been at the forefront. And this has been, like you said, it has a lot of people have been involved in, creating this bill. This is by no means a one person job to get to this point. There have been a lot of resources and individuals that we have relied on, and I'm incredibly grateful, for you guys and our community and all the different coalitions out there that, really helped us get to this point. And I know some of the things, seem a little uncertain of where are we going to go from here? What are we going to do next? But that's kind of the beauty of it, is that we're actually now trying to figure those things out by doing the statewide assessment.
That's awesome. And earlier in our discussion here this morning, Dr. Crowl mentioned the criticality of septic to sewer conversions. And that's one thing that I think many folks are coming to agree upon, that getting to a centralized sewer system is going to be a critical factor for us. And Rep, is there anything else specifically on the bill? Parts of it, I feel like we keep going to some of the highlights. Are there any specifics in there that we haven't yet covered that deserve some more of our attention?
It's a big bill. It really is. I had a separate bill that created the trust fund for that. So, that is now codified in statute that, there is a specific resilience trust fund, and the legislature will need to fund that trust fund for up to $100 million annually for a lot of these projects. So I think it's important that, we have these great ideas, but we need to make sure the funding is behind it as well. I know you mentioned septic to sewer conversion, and that specifically wasn't part of my bill, but that was a big component of the legislature this year of providing funding for septic to sewer conversion. And I think that's so important for our environment. I know that here in Miami-Dade, it's a big issue for us. There's plenty of other communities throughout the state, but that's something that really affects us. On the legislation front, specifically for this bill, I think what we also try to do is really empower these coalitions. There's regional coalitions out there who have been doing an amazing job, and we want them to be partners in this. Some of us, we are experts in specific areas, and we want to make sure that those experts, we're relying on them as a resource. So that's why we've put language in here to make sure that we are working with those coalitions.
That's awesome. Thank you. You mentioned that other bill. Are there any other bills in the session beyond the amazing one you did that ought to have a little bit of our attention this morning as well?
There's so many different issues and so many bills out there. It's hard to pick just one. It's like trying to pick a favorite child sometimes. But like I said, I think the funding, the record funding that we're spending on this is just huge for us as a state. It takes leadership at every level. It really does to get to this point and get it done. And like I said, I think that it's something that has been long overdue. And we're lucky that this year we finally had leadership at every level who saw that we needed this. Our speaker Chris Sprouse, he has been very outspoken since the get-go about this being a priority for him and for this legislative session. And I just think that it's also seen in the funding that we're providing for the environment as a whole, for Florida Forever, for Everglades restoration, for the septic to sewer conversion. Guaranteeing those funds is just, it's an amazing accomplishment for our state and our communities.
That's great. Do you have any advice for folks like any local governments that are participating today, or folks like us in the Nature Conservancy on what we should be doing to help the successful rollout? How maybe we can start helping our local partners get projects together. Do you have any advice for us as stakeholders in this process to help you, because I think we can all probably agree that the best builder for success is how we can start showing some actual improvements in the process. So I'd love if you got a minute to share us your suggestions on how we can help.
Yeah, definitely. So I think a lot of what you're doing is amazing. You guys are definitely have been at the forefront of these issues. You know, our neighbor to the south, Monroe County, they've been doing a great job as well. I think, you know, now as DEP starts to roll out the grants for, you know, local communities to submit their assessments so we can go from there, it's going to be great for a lot of us to work together. Because, you know, everything is related to everything, right? So what we do here can affect Monroe County, what Broward County does can affect us, what happens in Collier County, you know, on the West Coast. You know, at the end of the day, we're all affecting each other in this. So I think that working together is so incredibly important. You know, like I said, our coalitions have been doing a great job. So let's make sure our coalitions are working with our local governments, you know, city, county, and then, you know, we're communicating with, you know, our neighbors around us to make sure that this holistic approach is going to be the best way to attack this as a state. Like I said, we really need to figure out this plan as a state, and that's why we created this bill, to make sure that we're looking at it from a holistic viewpoint.
That's awesome. And I think I can say with confidence that the leadership here with the Miami Chamber has been astounding in addressing some of our issues. And there are some folks here on the panels today that a lot of us have worked together for a lot of years, talking to you, Ms. Begay, on some of these projects. And so I think that the team is here and in place, that I think we can continue to shoot for some great successes with the foundational work that's been done here. And I just want to take a second and again, thank you for that. We've gotten one question in the Q&A portion, and I'm going to just put it out here and see how this works, because I don't think I've seen it articulated this way. But Representative, can you share with us how the federal administration's push towards offshore wind has been articulated in this bill, if in fact?
Oh,
I'm sorry, did I break up?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Sorry. No, the question is how has President Biden and the White House's administration's push towards offshore wind been articulated in this bill, if it has in fact?
So this bill specifically doesn't address that issue. This bill is, you know, solely geared towards resilience planning, flooding and sea level rise, and creating, making sure we create a statewide plan. So this is an issue that we put in here. We wanted to make sure that the focus of this is what we can do as a state. So of course, there's things that, you know, will need to happen on the national level, but, you know, as a state legislature, as state government, you know, we wanted to make sure we were focused on what we can do and how we can empower our local communities and bring more of those funds and dollars from the state level back into our local communities to empower them to continue the great work that so many of them are doing, but also those communities who haven't had the funding source to do that and accomplish that.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I've just had somebody text me something that I think we need to stop for just a second, because sometimes those of us who do this too much get way ahead of ourselves, and we need to step back and take a definitional look at something. So we've been talking about these climate collaboratives and regional stuff. So what I thought you and I could maybe talk about for just a second is it's a definition. What are these collaboratives, and what are some of our Southeast Florida Climate Compact examples? So if that's cool, I'm just going to take a second and say, to your point earlier about something that happens in Broward impacts Miami-Dade, or something that Miami-Dade impacts Monroe. Across the state of Florida, 11 different organizations have kind of come together as regional climate collaboratives to talk specifically to the point you just made, that climate change doesn't address a county boundary. And so regional, local governments, municipalities have all kind of come together with the Southeast Climate Compact probably 11 years or so ago now. And so we just needed to define for our audience what these climate collaboratives are. And they're kind of a quasi-governmental entity And previously, these groups didn't have a capacity as a group to apply for state funding for projects. And so I think your bill, if I am correct, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, allows that opportunity to now exist. Is that the case?
So yes, so we have put in there that they can, the compacts, the coalitions, I know there's a few different words out there. The Southeast Compact has been doing an amazing job. So they can now work with the local community to assist them in applying for those grants and the funding from the state. So like I said, we want to make sure that those entities that are doing such a great job and have been at the forefront of these issues, that we're continuing to empower them. And a lot of them, that's where the experts are. So we want to make sure that, we are taking the best approach to this, and we wanted to make sure that they are empowered in this.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. So Representative Cabrera, is there anything that you need to share with the group as we bring our discussion to a little bit of a close, and anything that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I want to thank you so much for having me here today. Thank you for all the work that you guys have been doing. Like I said, you have been leading the charge, and we are so incredibly grateful at the state for that. And we want to make sure that we continue to empower you and we bring more money back into our communities. Like I said, this is a starting point. We're not done. I think that we have accomplished so much, but we're just getting started, and we need to make sure that we continue to look into the future. We need to make sure that we protect our communities, protect our homes, protect our natural resources, really make sure that we're not selfish and we don't leave future generations with nothing. It's so important that we protect our state. We live in an amazing state, and let's make sure that everyone else after us can enjoy it.
That's awesome. And on behalf of the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce, please accept our sincere appreciation for this. It's just been a great discussion, and thank you so much. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the chair of the Resilience Committee, my colleague, Rod Braun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, awesome. Thank you, Garrett and Representative Demi Busada-Cabrera. Fantastic discussion. We really appreciate your efforts in the legislature. So just want to wrap up today. So we thank everyone for joining this year's Resilient Solutions Summit. Each year, I think the summit gets better and better and more relevant. I think we've set the bar really high. And as one of our speakers mentioned, the water energy nexus is shaping the landscape as we move towards net zero goals. So the water energy discussion is super relevant. And now we're looking at implementation with the resilience bill just being signed into law. So very exciting stuff happening. I'm feeling that the region is really well positioned with great minds, great companies committed to the transition. I would like to thank our sponsors once again. Thank you, CareerSource South Florida, FPL, Black & Veatch, JP Morgan Chase, EXP, Jacobs, and Florida International University. I would like to thank all our speakers, Mayor Levine Cava, Chuck Chaitovitz with the Chamber, Susie Toriente, Garrett Wallace, Representative Demi Busada-Cabrera, and all of our summit speakers for participating today. Fantastic stuff. We hope you enjoyed today's program and have a wonderful rest of your Friday. Thanks again.